Hey guys, Mr.B here. So today I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys how to do an oil change on a third generation Prius. This one happens to be a 2012. And this is just gonna be also a generic video on how to do an oil change. So I've got all the parts here. This vehicle happens to take full synthetic 0W20. So I've got 5 quarts here. Probably won't take the whole thing, but I've got enough to have extra. And then got the oil filter. This one happens to be a cartridge style oil. So that's what it looks like there. I've also got my ratchet, a rag, and the special Toyota oil filter sockets. So you guys want to make sure you get one of these if you're doing an oil change on a newer Toyota. They like to use those special sockets for their oil filter cartridges. But before I go ahead and do this oil change, I just want to talk about why we need to do oil changes. Oil changes prolong the life of your engine. If you don't do your oil change, on a regular basis when the manufacturer recommends it, typically every 3,000 to 7,000 miles, depending on the vehicle, and whether or not you use synthetic or conventional makes a difference. If you don't do your oil change on a regular basis, that oil is going to start to sludge up, cause problems, and eventually break internal engine components. So it's very, very important to change your oil on a regular basis so that you don't have any issues with your vehicle's engine later on down the road. As long as you change your oil when you're supposed to, you'll be all good. You want to make sure you check your vehicle's owner's manual or the service manual to see when exactly you're supposed to change your oil and what mileage. But anyways, this vehicle is due for an oil change, so I'm gonna go ahead and do it. First thing I like to do is check the oil. So my dipstick is right here. It's labeled as engine oil. So I'm gonna pull that out and wipe it off. Pull it back out and check the oil level. So the oil level on this car is a little low. Being that it's due for an oil change and it's only halfway down between the safe range, I'm gonna say that's okay. I'm going to check for a leak, of course, when I'm underneath the vehicle, changing the oil. But if there's no leaks, I would say it's safe to say that this engine is burning a little bit of oil at 282,000 miles. I would suspect that that's the problem. But either way, I'll still check for leaks just to see if there's anything leaking out on the bottom or around the valve cover or anything like that, right up on top. The oil cap is right here. It says engine oil, 0W20. So that right there tells you which type of oil it takes. There's differences in the weights of oil. So 0W20 is a pretty thin oil. A lot of newer cars are taking that stuff. But 5W30, 10W30, 15W40, there are other types of motor oils out there, engine oils out there. And the higher the numbers, the thicker it is. So you don't really want to put 15W40 in this engine because it's supposed to take 0W20. Could you? Technically yes, but should you? Technically no. So I'm going to go ahead and use the right oil for this vehicle, and I'm going to pop the cap loose and leave it off for now. Just that way I know that there's no oil in it when I'm done doing what I'm doing underneath. Seems kind of silly, but I like to do that just to remind myself, oh hey, there's no oil in the engine, in case I get sidetracked or have to go and do something else and have to come back and work on it later. So I'm gonna go ahead and safely lift and support this vehicle and get it set down on some jack stands. So another thing I want to mention too before I go ahead and drain the oil is, especially on these Priuses, definitely any hybrid vehicle, you want to make sure that the key fob is nowhere near the vehicle, because even if the key fob is near the vehicle, in my pocket, and I'm around the vehicle, if the vehicle detects that the key is nearby, it can and will start up this engine to charge the high voltage battery in the back if the high voltage battery is low on charge. And obviously if we're draining the oil out of the engine, we don't want it to spontaneously start up just because it feels like it. So I'm going to take this key fob and I'm going to put it as far away from the vehicle as I can, within reason, of course, and then go ahead and start draining the oil. All right, so underneath here we do have a plastic cover. It even says for service. There's a plastic clip right there I'm going to take loose. Might be another one here somewhere. And then pull this back to gain access to the drain plug, the oil drain plug, and the oil filter. Oh, one more right there. All right, so my oil drain plug is right here, and my oil filter is right there. The reason why I know this is the oil drain plug is because this whole piece right here is my engine. The front of the engine's right over here. This is a front wheel drive vehicle, so usually the front of the engine is on that passenger side. So that's my oil drain plug and not my transmission drain plug. You definitely don't want to get those mixed up. So I'm gonna go ahead and crack that loose and drain the oil into my drain pan. And go ahead and get that oil draining. Now, one thing you want to make sure of is that your drain plug has a good gasket. It looks like the gasket's still stuck up on the engine, on the oil pan. All right, so there's my gasket. If it's cracked or broken and it looks like it won't seal, then you're going to want to replace it. This one looks like it's been used quite a bit, but it isn't cracked and it isn't broken. So I'm going to go ahead and reuse it, and it'll work just fine. All right, so now that my oil is draining to just a small drip, I'm gonna go ahead and put my drain plug back in and snug it up with my ratchet. And when I go to snug up that drain plug, I just give it a little bit of effort to where it wants to stop. And once you get it to where it wants to stop, you just give it a little bit more, snug it up, and then you're done. So my drain plug's back in. Next thing I gotta do is get my oil filter out and crack it loose. And there's my oil filter. To change out that oil filter, just go ahead and pop the old one out. And then that looks like it's bent up a little bit, but it'll be all right. And then pop a new one in. And then there is an O-ring right here. There's an O-ring right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that O-ring off. And then the kit comes with a new one. And make sure it's lined up in that groove right there. Okay? Just like that. All right, so now I've got my oil filter ready to go back in. I'm just gonna go ahead and get that started by hand. And then I'm done. Right there is pretty good. So of course I'm gonna make sure I get my tool back, and then I'm going to take a rag and wipe all this up so there's no oil drips, and put that plastic panel back up and push those clips into place, and then I'll show you guys what's next. Now that I've got the vehicle off of the jack stands, the drain plug's tight, the oil filter's in, I'm going to go ahead and put oil in it. So I've got a funnel right here. I'm just going to put roughly 4 quarts in it and then check it. All right, so we're up on the stick, but it's not quite full yet. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this vehicle up now that it's got some oil in it. And the reason why is because I want to get some new oil into the new filter. If you top this vehicle off, or any vehicle off, after doing an oil change or draining the oil, and you don't start the engine first and then double check it, you will actually drive away with low oil. The reason being is once the pump pumps oil up into the filter, it fills the filter full of oil. All right, so now that I've started the vehicle for about 5-10 seconds, you can see that my oil levels definitely a lot lower on the stick. And I want it to be at that top dot. Okay, so now that I've topped it off, I've got my oil level right to that top dot. Try and get it to focus. So my oil level is right at that top dot on the dipstick, which is right where I want it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that back in. Obviously make sure your oil cap's nice and tight and wipe off any remaining oil spills that you might have. And this oil change is complete. I do like to take a look underneath just to make sure there's no oil drips or leaks underneath, which I don't see any. And the only thing left now would be to reset the oil maintenance light, the maintenance reminder. So I'm gonna go ahead and make another video on that. Other than that, if you guys found this video to be helpful, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Thanks.